To celebrate 15 years of the game being around, Minecraft just had some of their more famous staff react to their first few years of making the game, and in that we learned about the early phases.
The game was very much, you had an idea and then you just made it. It was not so much planning.
As well as how they managed to get multiple updates a year out in the early days.
I would frequently be there on weekends.
Yeah.
As well as all sorts of fun facts like why the chorus plants look the way they do, why it is that eating changed so much after 1.8, and even the feelings that they had after Microsoft bought the company.
I became actually really, really sad because I thought it felt weird that they would just sell off the whole company.
This is the beginning, something Minecraft have made to celebrate 15 years of the game being around. Even though the 15 days are over, we're still getting nostalgia content, and this was one of the more enjoyable 25 minutes I think they put out in years. It felt like it was cutting through the corporate lines that they've been drawing for a very long time, and I thought it was hugely interesting, so I figured I would give you some of the highlights in my opinion, starting with one of the very beginning things, which is they started the video by showing that classic Minecon moment.
Are you ready for the official release of Minecraft?
After the lever gets pulled, Minecraft is officially released, and this is such a hugely nostalgic moment, but also it clearly shows that Microsoft aren't doing their weird sanitization, corporatization of their history and pretending Notch doesn't exist. He's right there, and they have multiple references to him in the video, such as when Daniel Kaplan, one of Minecraft's earliest employees, says this.
When I met Notch in 2009, I just tried out Minecraft for like a couple of minutes, and I was like, what is this, like super low pixel density game? And it took me a while to understand the brilliance of Minecraft.
It's funny because a lot of Minecraft's early employees basically admit this same thing, such as Jeb, who says when he first started,
When I played it those first weeks, I didn't really understand the magnitude of what I was seeing, because it was such a simple game and it was very indie, like it was like Marcus did it very quickly, and like the community back then was mostly other game developers.
Yeah.
But then by the time he was looking into being hired, the game had sold 300,000, and then by the time he started, it had sold 700,000.
And just 2 months later, we celebrated like the first million sold.
They also gave us the fun fact that the shirt Jeb is wearing here, this creeper, is actually the first piece of Minecraft merch ever released, and that apparently he's just been wearing it for 15 years, which I think is absolutely hilarious personally. What I also think is hilarious is that they didn't just do the fun little jovial references to the past, they also referenced quite a few old mechanics and why they were the way they were, and I thought this was hugely interesting to hear, such as this comment about how potions were going to work originally.
Well, the thing that comes to mind for me was actually the potion brewing system, and I couldn't really get it the way I wanted it. I wanted it to be more experimental, like you were mixing and matching things and see like what potion will I get now. But in the end, it was just too complicated. So that's why we ended up with a potion system, which is more or less the same today.
This is something that I have been going on about for as long as this channel exists. I think that the potion system in Minecraft would be so cool if it did have an experiment layer to it, like how Oblivion or Morrowind and all sorts of other RPGs sort of do it. But interestingly, they say that, yeah, we tried this so much, we just couldn't get it to be great. And so they said, in the end, it's people say it's complicated right now, but it's way less today than it ever would have been before. And I guess that is sort of true. The potion system right now takes one big batch of learning and then you understand it forever. But the potion system previously would have basically been unlearnable in the same way that working out what enchantments your sword or shovel would get is now, but with an even higher level. I think that's a really interesting point that they did actually go through. They also referenced something else which is huge, which we haven't heard a Minecraft employee really acknowledge since the first time it came up, and that is to do with dragons.
There's also been rumors about other dragons, but I haven't seen any.
The red dragon?
The red dragon, yeah.
I'm really glad that they referenced that because, you know, it's one of those things that the community will occasionally get a big glimmer of hope for. I think the fact that they sort of laugh about it a bit here is both acknowledging that they've never officially cancelled it, but also that it's something that's been the source of rumours for 13 years. I think at this point we can say, yeah, the odds for Red Dragon coming to the game are about as high as any other fantasy idea, but it is still good that they're referencing it. What they also referenced was the end update after this. I thought this was hugely interesting because they do directly reference the fact that, yeah, they made the end in the adventure update, update 1.0, but then they show the combat update 1.9 side by side. The combat update also changed the entire dragon fight, and I thought they were going to reference where they got this idea for the new dragon fight, but interestingly they just said this instead.
Nathan, also known as Dinnerbone, he wanted to make the dragon fight both more interesting and actually a little bit hard.
Okay, so the vast majority of this video is hugely interesting and I'm really glad they got to say it, but I do feel like they missed over a huge point here, which is probably the glory point for Minecraft console players. It's the fact that Minecraft Java designed an end and then they said, yeah, we actually want to make this end better, and then they made a new end which, instead of having pillars randomly, would make them in a big circle around the center, with two of those towers always having cages around them. Do you know where this idea came from? It might have been a Minecraft developer who played on their console at one point, but this is directly taken from the console edition port of the game. It was kind of proof that the console edition could do the end fight hugely differently and get it done better, and so I'm fascinated that it didn't come up there. I wanted to hear Minecraft developers reference the console version, but it's fine, we didn't get it here. Maybe later on this video, because they do reference how the chorus plant came to be, because they spoke briefly about how, yeah, the reason the combat update updated the end is to make it a better fight, but also they wanted to have a reason to go to the outer islands and have an additional reward. And he said that the entire way that the chorus route came about was because Nathan was talking about bananas.
The inspiration for the chorus plants was actually, again, Nathan, he was talking about bananas. Bananas, they are not trees, they are plants, so they only give fruit once and then you have to replant them.
Okay.
And I thought that was very interesting, so that's why the chorus plants, they give the seeds at the top, but you have to replant the whole thing in order to get new seeds.
I love when Minecraft takes like a very realistic thing and then morphs it into something bizarre and kind of fantasy style in the game, such as bananas becoming chorus plants. I think that is a beautiful example of taking something and making it into an educational Minecraft feature while also making it absolutely crazy and useful in its own right. But yeah, after talking about the end update, they moved on to talking about things like the pretty scary update, which was called that because it wasn't just the scary features, it was also pretty features like flower pots and such. And interestingly, Jeb said this about the Wither and what he does in his own survival worlds.
We invented this a creature that you would spawn yourself by gathering skeleton heads from the Wither skeleton, which was on you. These days, if I'm going to spawn the Wither, because I want to spawn it because I want to build a beacon, I use the various different tricks in order to minimize
the damage.
I thought this was hugely interesting that the lead designer of Minecraft doesn't want to deal with the Wither in its original state and prefers to deal with it in the easiest way possible. What I also thought was hugely interesting, this is from the other part of this, he also clarified what his what he thinks about the ice frozen biomes, and honestly I thought this was hugely satisfying to hear too.
I try to avoid snowy biomes because it's just so annoying.
It's confirmed, Jeb hates the frozen biomes just as much as the rest of us do, and I also think that's kind of fun. Like, you'd like to imagine that a game designer is like, oh, everything in the game is perfect, but actually, no, for a good game, you need to have features that people hate and actively try to avoid, because it makes the other features better. It sounds very counterintuitive, and honestly, it feels a bit weird to say out loud, but that is in fact true. And so, yeah, they also made a lot of other comments that I thought were hugely interesting, such as the explanation for why it is that eating got so much harder after 1.8, and that is because they introduced potions. When they introduced potions, they made eating a lot worse. What they also said in here was the fact that the Redstone update was a huge game changer. I think this is kind of obvious to everyone, but also they made a comment about why it is that the update that changed the world was the last update that really changed seeds for a very long time, all the way until Caves and Cliffs, and that is because
I think if people wanted to get terrain changes, or it was like, okay, well, we have to do this kind of all at once, because if you update the world every update, then people's terrain gets a little bit weird.
I always like hearing that Minecraft developers do understand that people's worlds will be going from terrain update to terrain update, and so they still want to update the game and make it the best, but they know that worlds are going to be affected that way. But what I also thought hearing, it was very interesting to hear after so long, was Jeb's explanation for why he added the big guardian in the Ocean Monument.
I added the Elder Guardians, which is a bigger and stronger version of the Guardians. That also would give you this effect that made you break blocks very, very slowly. to encourage you to actually go through the maze instead of just digging through it.
It's the challenge that I think everyone's come across if they've ever tried to make a Minecraft map, that no matter how interesting or complex a maze you make, people are just going to mine through it or climb over it, and I think it's fun that they reference it right here. But yeah, there are a lot of fun little references about what they did here and there in Minecraft's past, but they also do talk about the change in how the company culture really has gone from when it used to be just a couple of people to a couple dozen people to the huge corporation that it is right now. And they do reference the Microsoft merger, but even before that, they say how it used to be in the early days of the office as they go through an old office tour, which seriously makes it look very cool. But in response to people who say that things were so much more hectic back then, there were multiple updates releasing a year, they allude that the reason for that was because
I would frequently be there on weekends.
Yeah, when I got to this office, I felt like I was there it was just like I would come in, but there was never an end. There was never an end leaving time.
This is a really interesting point about the early phases of any project, be it an indie game, be it any company, is that everyone is pouring so much of their time in to make sure that everything gets done as soon as it can be. And you can run a company like that for a few years, but it gets very hard to run a very large company at that scale because people start wanting to take time for holidays or starting to, have reasonable work-life balance. A very reasonable thing to aim for, but that will eventually, unless you can perfectly work out how to hire the right number of people or be more efficient, that will eventually work its way to the end consumer, where instead of seeing a crazy menagerie of Minecraft features coming out every few weeks, instead, they come out in a controlled batch every year or so, outside of the snapshot process. Also, they made a really interesting point that I never considered. Whenever we talk about how Minecraft development has slowed down, we never consider this.
I think at that time, barely anyone had kids.
No.
Yeah, this is something that's so obvious in retrospect, but Jeb has children, Dinnerbone has children. I'm sure that most of the other higher-ups at Mojang who were there in the original days have children too, and this means that even when they're really passionate about a feature and they want to, pour the midnight oil into it, ultimately there is a limit to how much time you can spend on these things when you have family. Maybe this is just an interesting thing for me to think about, someone who kind of went through the same thing about 10 years ago of Minecraft, of going so crazy into it and now having to work out how do you fit the rest of your life into this? But there is a really deeper point under here that there is only so much time in a week, and so there are lots of problems that you can solve by just working harder at them. I mean, the idea of going overtime so you can pay for something right here, right now is great, but once you try to commit yourself to having to unsustainably spend 80 hours a week just to stay about floating above the water, that's when things will start to break, and I guess I'm glad for Minecraft that they managed to work out a way out of that, but also, now I start to understand, if nothing else, why it is the way that it is. Speaking of understanding things, why they are the way they are, I thought it was hugely interesting that they were actually candid about the Microsoft acquisition, with Jeb even saying
the acquisition time was confusing and uncertain. We didn't really know what to expect.
There are even some other early employees saying this.
I became actually really, really sad because I thought it felt weird that they would just sell off the whole company.
And then Lydia Winters, who is basically the face of the game at this point, saying,
We had Swedish culture and American culture. We had independent and corporate. It was almost like, let's take everything opposite and put it together.
Mixing together these different cultures must have been very hard, and I guess that kind of explains how, there is this real era difference of Minecraft before that point being this independent studio where everyone works crazy on everything all of the time, to the studio after that point. They work on lots of important things. Some of that takes some time away from Minecraft, but also they start to appreciate a bit more of a corporate culture, which means that some things start to happen which aren't always perfect, but also it means that they start to get this work-life balance. It is, when you work for a startup, it is expected that you can work 60 or 80 hours in a week if it's a big release week, but if it's a corporation, it's their problem if they don't get that done. They can solve that, not me. And there is an interesting level of that you sort of see in Minecraft from the outside looking in, at least, that I think is very, very interesting. And maybe you do too. So yeah, that has been Minecraft's last 15 years, or at least the first few years of that summarized. I thought it was really good of Minecraft to put this out, and I think it's kind of sad that looking at it compared to the other things on their channel, it's not as exciting to people as the Netflix announcement or as the Tricky Trials release day announcement, but I think that this is the sort of thing that is really useful for the wider games community to hear, because I think that Minecraft is a game that has gone through so much, and sometimes we forget about that. Sometimes we are focused on the week to week, the snapshot to snapshot, the new item to new item, but actually the progress that's been made over these years is absolutely huge. I mean, they referenced some stuff like, oh, the first Minecon was held in Las Vegas. They didn't think it was appropriate, they just wanted to go to Las Vegas.
It was because that's where everyone on the team wanted to go, I think.
I believe this is probably most kids ever been at a casino in Vegas.
I think Minecraft hitting 15 years is both a reminder of how old it is and how much of a gaming institution it's become, but also in a way how young that is. That is not that, you know, if someone was born when Minecraft was first released, they're still not able to vote. They're still not able to drink or to drive in most jurisdictions, and certainly not old enough to do both at the same time. But I think it's really, really interesting about just how much has changed in that time, but also how young of a game it ultimately is in comparison to the human lives or whatever, and the fact that you can see all these people you recognize from the early days still being people that have these fun memories of it. I know, I thought it was interesting, and hopefully you did too. If you found this to be a fun, nostalgic blast of the past, then please do like this video if you did like it, subscribe if you really liked it, and if you are curious, the 15 years of Minecraft does seem to be going on. We have the Netflix announcement on day 16, on day 20 we have this, and now we are just 10 days from the Tricky Trials update releasing. So yeah, it's very soon. Keep your eye on that. Also, I did big update questions on Saturday. I know YouTube won't send out more than a couple of notifications a day per channel, but a lot of people are going back to watch those, so thank you to everyone who is. And this Saturday, I think it'd be fun to do a similar version of these old style YouTube tutorials for big features, but to do it via YouTube Shorts, just if nothing else for the experiment. So that is precisely what we're going to be doing, and yeah, I'm looking forward. There's only 10 days left, but I want to use this as just one last moment to say that Minecraft has been around for 15 years now. Weirdly enough, during their celebrations, my channel turned 15, so I feel a lot of these same emotions about, wow, this has been around for a while, so much has changed, everything has changed, and yet there are some things that are still the same, and those are the things worth celebrating. Thank you to all of you who have been around for any percentage of that journey, for allowing me to do what is ultimately, it was a dream job for me back then, it's become a dream job for so many other people since, but it is one of the things that I take most seriously in this world, and I have put so much of my life into this, and I intend to do precisely the same in the future. Thank you for allowing me to do that, and I look forward to seeing you over the next week. I hope you have a successful rest of your day and your week, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.